Hey, what is up everybody? Hearthstone Academy here, and today we're going to be going over the first big nerfs from the Witchwood expansion meta. So, first thing we see is most of these nerfs are not actually from Witchwood expansion directly. So at least the first three cards we have here are cards that are actually from the previous expansion. But really, they're just becoming more and more powerful as new cards get added. Um, so it's good to see Blizzard being more proactive about the nerfs. So let's cover what they actually are. So right off the bat, we see two huge nerfs coming to Warlock. So first we have Dark Pact. It's going from restoring 8 health to your hero to restoring 4 when it destroys a friendly minion. And that 4 health is absolutely huge for Warlock. When you play Control Warlock, you need every little bit of health you can. That deck often wins by coming to within a few HP of dying before unleashing a great combo, usually involving a Dark Pact, or by playing its Death Knight hero. Really, Warlock is a deck, and Control Warlock in particular, is a deck that needs healing all the time. So the fact that Dark Pact goes from 8 down to 4 is absolutely huge, especially because it was such a cheap heal. Almost every single game you get at least one of these off, if not two. That means essentially Warlock starting health goes down by about 4 if you think of one of these getting played every single game. Um, which is pretty big for a deck that relies on health as a resource. The next big nerf is Possessed Lackey. So this one I actually don't agree with as much as the others. And I might be biased because Control Warlock is one of my favorite decks. But the nerf here was basically taking it from 5 mana to 6. And what that does is the amazing combo of playing Possessed Lackey, then Dark Pacting it. That goes from from being something you can do on turn 6 to being something you can do on turn 7, which gives a lot more time. That one turn is huge in terms of giving the opponent a chance to get answers, in terms of giving them a chance to build up a board so they can efficiently deal with your Void Lord. Um, so this is a very big nerf. It's 1 mana. It's one huge mana. Because the way that this deck would win is it would take control early on, by getting that turn 6 Void Lord before the opponent can deal with it. And then from there it all snowballs. So by pushing the snowball back one turn, that actually has a huge impact. The reason I don't agree with this nerf that much is because if you look at the Possessed Lackey Dark Pact combo to bring a Void Lord out, there are quite a few things about it that make it not as great as it first seems. So if we look at it when Possessed Lackey was 5, you're paying 6 for a Void Lord, right? The Possessed Lackey and the Dark Pact get the guaranteed immediate activation. You're paying 6 for a 9-cost card, and you're also healing yourself for 8, is the way that it worked before. Which sounds absolutely incredible, right? But there are a few caveats. First one is if you want to guarantee a Void Lord pull, you're going to be running no other demons, so that affects your deck building. Secondly, is it assumes that you're going to have a Void Lord in the deck. There have been so many games where I draw both Void Lords before I can even get one Possessed Lackey off. And the truth is you will almost never get 2 Possessed Lackeys into 2 Void Lords. The odds of that are so low because you have to draw the Possessed Lackey, then you have to put it down, then you have to kill it. And it's really unlikely you can get 2. So odds are, yes, if you pull the combo off, you get a lot of value. But you really pay for that, I think. And the fact that later on in the game you're guaranteed, basically guaranteed, that your second Possessed Lackey will be a dead draw, because you'll have already drawn Void Lord. And who's going to play a 5-cost 2/2 with no benefit? So that is it for that. It's going to be a huge nerf to Warlock. I think it'll still be like maybe a tier 2 deck, Control Warlock, and Q Block, but I don't think it's going to be as dominant as it currently is. Next we have, I think, what is the biggest nerf coming to Standard, and that's or Call to Arms, it went from 4 mana to 5 mana. And that is not just a 1 mana nerf. That is completely altering the way that the card works. Because in our current meta, if you're playing Paladin, you're playing almost definitely either even Paladin or odd Paladin. So 1 mana nerf basically switches which deck this card can even fit into. So, and I guess there's also Murloc Paladin. That's fine. Murloc Paladin will probably continue to use this because this is just such a broken card. But looking at even and odd in particular. So first, this is straight out of even Paladin. That's, I mean, it's odd now. 5's an odd number. In case we weren't aware, even though I'm sure we am now with the odd even meta we have. But 5 is an odd number, so this is not going to get played in even Paladin. This is going to see play, if in any even odd Paladin, it's going to be an odd Paladin. But that's kind of problematic because it recruits 3 minions that cost 2 or less. If you're playing Odd Paladin, you don't have any minions that cost 2 or less. So really this is recruiting 3 minions that cost 1 or less. So it's a 5-cost card that brings out 3 1/1 minions from your deck. Then the question I guess sort of becomes, will it still see play in Odd Paladin? And it honestly might. It's really big. You basically draw 3 1-cost minions, and then you play 3 1-cost minions. Sure, there's some randomness to it. Sure, you don't get battle cries, but it's just such a huge effect. Drawing 3 cards costs 5. To draw 3 cards and then play them immediately, 3 1-cost cards and play them immediately, that costs, I mean, that should cost 8, right? But here you get that for 5. In exchange for that, give up a little bit of randomness. I think it might still see play in Odd Paladin. That's how broken this card is. But yeah, so that's it for Call to Arms. So if we look at the next set of nerfs, we have just 3 more nerfs. First one is Naga Sea Witch. So if you don't play Wild, you're probably looking at this wondering, what? Because this card didn't really see a whole lot of play when it was in Standard. But the thing with Wild is things get really wild. So there's a change to the way that the Giants work at some point. I'm not sure exactly when, because I don't personally play a whole lot of Wild. But it changed it so that the way Naga Sea Witch interacted with them, their base cost was 5. So if you had a Molten Giant, its base cost would be 5, and then if you had lost 5 health from your starting health, so if you're at 25 health, it would cost 0. So it'd be very, very easy to get some 0-cost Giants out. Mountain Giant was almost guaranteed 0-cost Giant. You have Arcane Giant. You have, and again, you have every Giant in Wild. So you could basically plop this down and then fill a full board full of 8/8s. And that is just a broken deck. Because by turn 5, how's the opponent going to deal with a board full of 8/8s? They're not. There aren't answers. Nerfing this up to 8 mana. So this is a 3 mana nerf. This is absolutely huge. It makes it more fair, really. Like, normally, I'd say a 3 mana nerf is completely killing a card, but in this case, I think it makes it more of a balanced card. Because by turn 8, if you throw down a bunch of free Giants, the opponent's gonna have a lot more options for removal. If you're playing against a Warlock, they'll have Twisting Nether. If you're playing against a Mage, they'll have Blizzard, they'll have Frost Nova. I guess they would have had Frost Nova before anyway. But really, the point is that this is giving time for the opponent to build up a board and have answers. Because another thing is, if you're going to be playing all these Giants and you're going to be counting on Naga Sea Witch for that combo, your deck isn't going to be that great, so it gives the opponent time to build up a board also. So hopefully their current board in combination with AoE should be able to take out the Giants. Maybe not always, because a ton of 8/8s is extremely difficult to deal with, but it does make it more fair. So next we have a Spiteful Summoner nerf. So this is going to be a huge hit to all the Spiteful decks out there. Right now, Spiteful Priest and Spiteful Druid are the 2 big ones. This is another nerf that I'm not that happy about. It's another one of these where I think that the card has a much greater effect, or I think it looks like it has a much greater effect than it actually does because of all the trade-offs you have to make. So Spiteful Summoner, they're raising the cost by 1 mana. And the reason I think this card is somewhat fair now is because you have to incur a huge cost in deck building if you want to build a Spiteful deck. If you think about it, if you want to build a Spiteful deck, you all of a sudden have no access to cheap spells, to cheap removal. You can't really play AoEs because all these decks sort of start at like 8 mana for their cheaper spells. Um, and so playing a game without AoE, without cheap removal, without being able to take tempo back with that quick 2 or 3 mana spell to clear a minion, it's really a huge cost. And sure, you can play Spiteful Summoner, and sometimes it'll pull uh, the Tyrannus, and that's awful. But in reality, I think that the problem with this card has been its randomness more than anything else. I don't like the fact that an entire game is basically decided based on which 10 cost minion they become. Because oftentimes it is. If they become Tyrannus, you lose. If they don't, you win. But really, um, that's more of an issue with the card design, I think, than with anything else, especially not with the cost. But either way, it costs one more now, so now you're going to be getting your 12-12 to 16-16 stats um, at turn 7 instead of at turn 6. And another reason I'm not a huge fan of this nerf, which again I know is extremely controversial because this card is everywhere in the meta right now. But another reason I'm not a big fan of the nerf is going from turn 6 to turn 7. What this card does is it puts a big single target on the board. Going from turn 6 to turn 7 doesn't really open that much big single target removal. All the big removal is in like in the 3 to 6 mana range. If you look at things like Deadly Shot at 3 mana up to Siphon Soul at 6. So I don't think going up 1 mana is going to be a giant nerf to this, the same way that the Naga Sea Witch nerf gives the opponent way more time to get answers on the board. But it'll be interesting to see if all these Spiteful decks can continue to dominate. And the final nerf is to the Caverns Below. So now if we read the text, it says, play 5 minions with the same name, reward Crystal Core. So if you've played this card before, you know, it says the exact same thing. So what's the difference? The difference is that this Crystal Core card now, it says for the rest of your game, your minions are 4/4, not 5/5. So that sort of begs the question, okay, what does that do? And that's a good question, because really, I'm not a big fan of this nerf. This nerf had to happen. There had to be a nerf to the Caverns Below, but this was not a good way to handle it, in my opinion. In my opinion, they should have upped the number of minions you have to play with the same name. But either way, the effect this is going to have, I don't think this is going to have much of an effect on the deck. I still think it's going to be tier 1, tier 2. I think a more reasonable nerf would have been to make it so you have to play 6 minions with the same name, or to make it so that all the minions in your deck and hand are 5/5. That way, you don't get all these crazy one-turn kills after they play Crystal Core, where they keep bouncing back and forth the same charge minions and just absolutely destroying you. But this is a nerf we got. They brought him down to 4/4. It's a slight decrease in power level. That might give you an extra turn to kill them. Maybe 1 or 2 turns to kill them. You might even be able to contest the board a little bit better. But really, this is still a deck that suffers from what it suffered from before. And that is that it will lose almost every single control matchup, and it will lose almost every single aggro matchup, and it will win almost every single control matchup. So there we have it. These were 6 huge nerfs, definitely going to alter the standard meta. Naga Sea Witch nerf won't really affect the standard meta, but I'm sure it'll have a huge effect on Wild, where Giants reign supreme. But yeah, these were our 6 nerfs. You can see Warlocks being targeted, we can see Paladins targeted, and of course Quest Rogue. So I think coming forward, what we're probably going to start seeing is maybe some more odd rogue. I think Fatigue Warrior has a real shot at making some moves now that like a Baku Fatigue Warrior now that Warlock's kind of dwindling. Um, no nerfs to Shutterlock. That's something some people were expecting, but I guess that this is sort of confirmation that after Blizzard's looked at all of their gameplay information, that to them it's not really a problem, that deck isn't good enough to really need any sort of intervention. But yeah, so there we have it. These were our nerfs. These are my thoughts on them. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please subscribe, like it, do all that good stuff. Leave a comment if you have any questions, if you agree, if you disagree with any of my opinions, please. I'd love to talk about that. But yeah, so that was it for this video, and thanks for watching.